This is the Idaho Gubernatorial Election Interviews with John Webb. The interviews are brought to you by Stein's Family Foods in Osborne and Kellogg, Elite Lawn Care in Osborne, and Building Maintenance and Supply in Wallace. The interviews are made possible by Channel 3 News, Suddenly Communications, and the Wallace High School. Here's tonight's interviewer, John Webb.
Good evening and welcome to the Idaho Gubernatorial Election Interviews. I'm John Webb, news anchor and managing editor for Channel 3 News. Throughout this special, I will interview the Democratic and Republican nominees for Idaho governor. The questions that I have prepared have went through several editors and hours of development. We reached out to each candidate for governor about a month and a half ago, and today we have Republican nominees Tommy Ahlquist, a former ER doctor and Boise businessman, Raul Labrador, Idaho's first congressional U.S. representative, and Brad Little, Idaho lieutenant governor. We also have the Democratic nominees Paulette Jordan, District 5 Idaho House representative, and A.J. Belukoff, a businessman and a former member of the Boise School District Board of Trustees. I will ask each candidate the same 10 questions with an individual question that affects mainly themselves. I want to show you a poll that was conducted at the Wallace Junior-Senior High School. We asked 51 juniors, seniors, and teachers to choose one candidate for governor. Tommy Ahlquist came out on top at 19, and A.J. Belukoff came in second at 11. Let's begin tonight's interviews with Republicans Tommy Ahlquist, Raul Labrador, and Brad Little, followed by Democrats Paulette Jordan and A.J. Belukoff. But before we begin tonight, we would like to let you know that we met with Tommy Ahlquist at his request at the Tall Pine Restaurant in Pinehurst. He was in the middle of a tour and was pressing for time. We hope you enjoy. As you know, Idaho is ranked 48th in education, and only 20% of Idaho students are college ready. If elected governor, what would you do to improve education in Idaho?
Oh, so this will be the biggest focus. I think last time I saw you, it's been a long time ago. You know, I've spent a lot of time this year focusing on K-12 education. If you look at education spending in Idaho, we spend 63 cents of every dollar on education between K-12 and higher ed. Yet if you look at our proficiency scores, we're at the bottom. If you look at our teacher pay, we're at the bottom. And probably more important than that, before I went around and met with all these school districts, I've met with 81 of the 115 school districts now. I'll debate education with anybody. I think the problems are this. One, we need to fix the way the Department of Education interacts with the Board of Education. We just have to fix that. It's been a problem for years. Everyone says it's a problem, but no one wants to fix it. We'll fix it. Two, we've got to get more of the dollars down to the teachers. You know, when you can make $12,000 to $18,000 more going across the border as a teacher, being underpaid is the start. It's not everything though. The second thing is we over-regulate our teachers. Okay, so our teachers start underpaid, and then every time we give any more money, we layer them with mandates and regulations and teaching to test. So you had no student left behind, then Common Core, then the next thing, the next thing, the next thing. So they're fatigued. And then lastly, who do we blame when something goes wrong? Our teachers. That's the current state of education. Secondly, I think we need vocational education in every high school in the state. Anywhere you see vocational education programs in the high schools, it creates line of sight between kids in Idaho and jobs in Idaho. And if we can keep our kids right here and plug them straight into jobs, we will do so well. But there's so much work to be done on that. And then finally, higher education, same problem. Let's streamline kids through 2- and 4-year degrees, 2 jobs out the other end, and make those connections. Right now we don't make enough of those connections. So it'll be a focus of our administration. Education is the foundation of our economy. We get that right, a lot of other things go right.
So let's start with the myth that Idaho is 48th in education. We're 48th in spending. We're not 48th in performance. We're in the top 25%. We're about, not top 25%, we're 25th or 26th in performance. Now, should we be proud in Idaho of being 25th or 26th? Obviously not. You don't go around your school with a t-shirt that said, I'm number 25. Nobody does that. But we need to also ensure that we let the people know that we are doing really well when it comes to education when we're spending 48th or 49th in the United States, and we're performing pretty well in some of our schools. In fact, the top spending school district in the United States is Washington, D.C., and they're the bottom in performance in the United States. So money never equates to performance. But what I want to do is we should be in the top 10. We shouldn't be just happy with being in the top, in one of the 25th or 26th states in the United States. So what I want to do is what I want to encourage every child, and I want to make sure that every child and every high school student has a meaningful opportunity after high school. Every student who graduates from high school should have a meaningful opportunity. What that means to me is that we should either have enough credits towards an associate's degree when you graduate from high school, or you should have some sort of technical training or technical certificate, whether it's CTE or whether it's in high tech, or we should identify the kids that are not graduating with sufficient knowledge and sufficient skills to make it in society. We should remediate them at the junior high and high school levels. We need to spend our time educating, making sure that every single kid graduates with that meaningful opportunity.
First off, that's incorrect. We are not 48th. If you're a student in Idaho and you take the ACT test, which is for college bound, you are higher than Washington, Oregon, Montana, Wyoming, and Utah. So first off, now we might be 48th in value, the amount we spend, but that 48th ranking is based on a prescription from a Washington, D.C. Group that talks about the attainment level of the parents. It talks about whether there's state-funded pre-K. It talks about a lot of things that have nothing to do with what our professionals in the classrooms are doing. So I categorically reject that we're 48th in Idaho.
Well, the first thing that I hear as I travel around the state and visit with superintendents and principals is we need better funding. The legislature has been charged by our Constitution with establishing and maintaining a uniform and thorough system of public schools, and they're not doing that right now. You know, in some districts, principally in the urban areas, we have districts that provide a full range of curriculum, including art, music, foreign languages, and advanced placement courses and so forth. You can go to many of our rural areas and they go to school 4 days a week. They don't provide a music experience or art or foreign language, and you can't offer kids advanced placement. So we need better funding. When I've asked, this last week I was in Arco and talking to the superintendent there, and I said, what's the most important thing the state could do to make your job easier? And he said, better funding. We have a hard time attracting teachers. In fact, he introduced me to one of the teachers. We were having lunch there. One of the teachers came out of retirement. She'd been retired 7 years, and they couldn't hire a teacher for one of their classrooms, so the superintendent talked this retired teacher into coming back this year to teach this class. So we need to do that so that we can offer our students, no matter where they live, the full range of educational opportunities. So they develop, you know, by experiencing music, art, foreign languages, they get career technical education opportunities, making sure that that's uniform and thorough throughout the entire state.
Well, I want to start with our local schools. Being that I'm from rural North Idaho, I would definitely want to fight for a lot of our dilapidated schools that we've seen and experienced, especially with our supplemental levies that we fight for every other year. We want to make sure that we're funding our schools beyond just paying the bills to keep the lights on. We want to make sure that we're offering resources in the classrooms, paying our teachers better, offering more programs such as dual credit so that we can have a running start to eliminate some of the higher education costs and get our kids onto the programs that they choose. Voc Tech training, we need to start implementing more support, more programs to help our kids who want to get right off into their career path, because not everyone wants to go on to college. They want to go right into their career field, like what you're doing. You're showing us remarkably that there are other options that you want to go into, whether it's graphic design or carpentry, and same with higher education. Making sure that we have honors placements programs and advanced placement, which we aren't offering as is. And what I've noticed with my own kids is when they're excelling, it's tough to have a certain level of resources. And one of those that I've experienced is the fact that we've even let go of gifted and talented programs. And so we've done a lot to our school systems to really hurt local families and communities, and cutting back to 4-day school weeks and Just getting to this point where we've even de-incentivized for our own people to teach in this state has been a struggle. So we have to get back into getting to the root of our education system and supporting our teachers so that they're not only respected but they're paid better, and that way trying to drive more of our people here at home to stay home. And I was pretty much made it my major concern since I've been in the legislature for the last 4 years, and the last 2 years I've been working with another representative from southern Idaho who is a teacher. So we co-sponsored legislation to incentivize teachers by trying to pay off their student loan debt. So it was actually called the Student Loan Forgiveness Program. And I think that's just one small area that we can help our teachers, but there's much more we can do.
Idaho teachers are paid an average of $47,000 a year, and Idaho is ranked 43rd on the highest paid teacher scale. A teacher who has worked at the Wallace High School for 4 years makes about $33,000 a year. This is making it difficult to recruit and retain teachers. How will you address this?
So the first thing we need to do, as an outsider coming in, it's hard for me to get my nose completely under the circus tent yet, but we need to go line item by line item through the current education budget and get as much of that down locally to teachers. There's a lot of money being spent in this state. I think we can spend better. And then we got to have a trajectory where we're actually focusing on retention of those teachers and paying our teachers and getting our good teachers pay so that they can take care of our kids.
So what we need to do is we need to improve the economy of Idaho. We're already spending 63% of our budget in the state of Idaho in education. We're not going to be able to go above 63. We can't go to 70% or 80% because then you're going to have other areas in our budget that are going to go wanting. So what we need to do is make sure that our GDP grows in Idaho, that our revenues grow in Idaho. And the way you can do that is by reforming the way that we do taxes in Idaho. So we have the most Republican legislature of any of our neighbors, but we still have the highest taxes of any of our neighbors. So what I want to do is bring down everybody's taxes to 5%. I want to do 5% corporate, 5% individual, 5% sales tax. I call it my 5-5-5 plan. And with that plan, we will see unprecedented growth in Idaho. The revenues will grow, and the people of Idaho will be able to afford paying teachers more, having more money for infrastructure, having more money for schools. The second thing that I want to do is I want to get rid of some of the mid-level administrators that we have in education. We're spending a lot of money on administration and not enough money on the classroom. And what we need to do is pay our teachers more by getting rid of some of the regulations that we're giving to these local school districts. We need to have more autonomy and self-control in the school districts. We need to set high standards for the schools, but I actually trust the local teachers, the local educators, the local administrators, and the local school boards and parents to take care of, to ensure that we can meet those goals in the state of Idaho. If you get rid of regulations, you can get rid of some of the mid-level administrators, and then you can put all that money into paying teachers more.
See, I don't know that that's correct, because our starting teacher pay is, you said that they work at the Wallace High School, they're paid $33,000, and they must be stuck in that upper grid layer, and that is not the denominator that's common all over Idaho. But in the last 4 years, we have put over $400 million into public education, with the bulk of that going into the career ladder, which is designed to increase teacher pay, both starting teacher pay and the entire grid.
Well, where would we get the funding? You know, this year the legislature blew it. They gave a tax cut that nobody had been asking for, and the Idaho Center for Fiscal Policy tells us that 80% of those tax cuts are going to people that live outside of Idaho. I would have, if I'd been the governor, worked with the legislature to redeploy those excess funds into education so that districts could pay better and attract more teachers. We just talked about the experience in Arco, where the superintendent had to recruit a retired teacher to come back and teach, and that was because they couldn't hire anybody at the salaries that they were offering. So we need to help them raise teacher compensation so that more graduates from college go into teaching, and that it would be a rewarding career for them.
Well, that's why it's part of my platform to raise their salary, and certainly to the part where we're raising it to not just the cost of living, but going beyond to ensure that we're getting the best and the brightest. We have a lot of schools from northern Idaho to southern that are seeing not only this shortage, but just a lack of students going on to receive their certification. So when they go into schools, oftentimes they're still students and not yet certified. And so people who are coming in are substituting and on a part-time basis. And it's, I think, really a challenge for those local schools to maintain the certificated teachers that they need. And that's one way to achieve it, is to ensure that we're addressing that ill, which is all across the country. But here in Idaho, yes, we've certainly seen the worst. And making them pay more out of their pocket is a major issue. I have lots of friends, even from the Plumber School District, that we let go over the summertime, and now still expecting them to pay more with their own. And while we're paying them less, we expect them to do more with less. And that's frustrating, because I know that while they're barely making ends meet with their families at home, they still have to pay for pencils and paper, and sometimes even buying their own equipment and technology so that they can help their students and try to do what they can to achieve the curriculum that they want to, and address the kind of education that they want to provide for our kids. And unfortunately, I feel like they're not only fighting on their own, but it seems to me that people have forgotten them in the legislature. And that's where, as governor, I will certainly make sure that we are addressing their concerns and supporting them, defending our teachers on the front line.
A typical family of 3 spends about $450 a month on groceries, which adds up to be about $24 a month in grocery sales tax. In total, Idahoans spend about $280 in grocery sales tax a year, and that's just for 3 people. Back in July of 2017, the Idaho Supreme Court upheld Governor Butch Otter's veto on removing the state's 6% grocery tax. If elected governor, would you repeal grocery tax?
Yes, I would repeal grocery tax. I think it affects all of our border towns. Money just leaves the state because of it. And 2, you look at something that people in need. We have a poverty problem in Idaho. 1/3 of Idahoans live in poverty or paycheck to paycheck. That difference makes a big difference for the families in Idaho, and I just think we'll get rid of it. Again, I think we spend our money inefficiently in Idaho. Let's spend our money well. Let's keep more of that money in our people's pockets, and grocery taxes will be one we can start at.
No, I do, absolutely. So we need to repeal the sales tax on groceries, but that's not enough. You just said that that's going to be a really small amount of money in people's pockets. I think we need to reduce all of our taxes. We need to get rid of loopholes in the tax code. Right now, the state of Idaho has a lot of special interest loopholes, where big businesses that have been dealing with, with the governor's office and have maybe given money to a governor in the past have received special exemptions. I don't want special exemptions for a specific group of people. I want all Idahoans to receive tax breaks. So yes, I want to get rid of the grocery tax on food, but sales tax on groceries, but I also want to reduce sales taxes to 5% for everyone. I want to make sure that we reduce the corporate tax and the individual tax to 5%. That would be a big reduction. Right now we're at 6.9%, and I think we will be a more competitive state, and more companies will grow in Idaho, and more companies will come to Idaho, and our economy will be better.
I've been in all along about repealing the grocery tax. Tax policy should be fair, simple, predictable, and competitive. And the grocery tax is not only not fair, it's not competitive, because if you're on one of the border communities next to one of those states that doesn't have grocery taxes, you don't have a grocery store in your town, because people go across the state line to buy groceries. So I'm all in for repealing the grocery tax.
I would very much be in favor of repealing grocery tax, because it makes the sales tax so regressive on lower income families. But at the same time, I would prefer to take a comprehensive look at all of the sales tax exemptions that are in the law right now, and evaluate why they were put in the law in the first place. What did we hope to accomplish? Are they still accomplishing that purpose? Are they still valid? And if not, I would like to repeal those that aren't providing the value to the state that we expected. I think if we found enough of those exemptions to repeal, we could not only exempt groceries, but we might be able to reduce the sales tax from the 6% back down to 5%.
Well, what I want to do even more is to cut back the tax at the local level, sales tax. because we are already overtaxing people at the local level, especially all over rural Idaho. Right now, we already incentivize big corporations. We have many corporate tax loopholes. We need to close those, shut them down, and ensure that they're paying their fair share in a local tax base. Local counties get hurt the most, and that's where it ends up being put on working families' backs to not only pay for the local bills, but end up having to pay more into the state pool. This is where I want to make sure that we're saving our local families money, help our local counties, and help grow our local economy. And in that regard, we will be able to cut taxes.
You wouldn't repeal grocery tax, though?
Well, we don't know if that's necessary at this point, but if it is, if we come to a full tax reform, and it is absolutely necessary, because right now that still benefits some of the working families. If this becomes an ability for us to cut $80 million in one area in that regard, and like I said, I want to close those loopholes so that we can also cut the local sales tax for working families and local communities, which would really benefit small businesses and help them thrive. Then yeah, we'll see how that works.
Where do you stand on Obamacare?
Obamacare is just part of the problem. I think if you go back 20 years in healthcare, we used to have a very primary care centric delivery system. It's not. It's very hospital centric now, with pricing schedules that have nothing to do with costs. There's no transparency for our patients. We need to change all of that. We need to fix the insurance industry. We need to Google this one, pharmacy benefit managers. There's an entire industry between pharmaceuticals and insurance companies. The joke's been on the American people too long, and we've got to really start addressing the root problems instead of what we're doing.
It needs to be repealed. Obamacare is a disaster for the United States. I was talking to a young man in Idaho Falls just 2 weeks ago. He had a chronic illness, and he told me, Congressman, Obamacare was supposed to help people like me. And since Obamacare, I have been paying more money in my out-of-pocket costs, and my monthly premiums are higher. He said that he was paying $300 a month before Obamacare on his monthly premiums. Now he's paying $1,200 a month. It's destroying families, it's destroying individuals, it's destroying businesses. We need to repeal Obamacare.
We did not want Obamacare in Idaho. The feds, the Congress, and the President said they're going to repeal Obamacare. I signed an executive order along with the governor in January to rid Obamacare of the people that purchase their insurance out on their own, whether it's a small business, whether you're an individual, whether your spouse is somebody that's covered by your business. And we are within weeks of Idaho being freed of Obamacare for those people that buy their own insurance. Remember, before Obamacare in Idaho, we had the most affordable insurance of any state except for maybe one or maybe two. We need to go back to that, and it needs to be an Idaho solution. We've offered that Idaho solution. We're just waiting for the federal government to catch up with us. The administration, the president and his top people agree with us. We're trying to convince the people down in the Department of Health and Human Services at the federal level to allow us to do it, and I believe we're very close right now.
The Affordable Care Act, I think, has been a real benefit to people. It's helped more people get insurance that didn't have health insurance before. Unfortunately, a lot of the Republicans in Congress have, and President Trump have sabotaged the Affordable Care Act and taken away some of its provisions. But it's been a real blessing for Idaho to have the health insurance exchange. In 2012, the state, between the state catastrophic fund and the county's indigent care fund, paid $56 million for uninsured care, for uninsured people who show up at the emergency room. After the insurance exchange was established under the Affordable Care Act, more people obtained insurance. So last year, the state paid $29 million. So we've reduced the state outlays from 56 to $29 million just because more people could afford insurance.
Well, the Affordable Care Act has really benefited the state of Idaho, and we have been able to take a lot of folks who weren't able to achieve access to primary care off of that list. We still have 62,000 people who are caught in that coverage gap, and what's important is to realize that we have folks who are suffering and who are dying without access to health care, and that is to our own detriment. That is a sad state that we are all in, because we have relatives, neighbors, and friends who are impacted by lack of access to quality health care. So we need to do better. This is where I support expanding Medicaid in our state.
Governor Butch Otter served 3 terms, winning his 3rd election in 2014. What is your stance on term limits for governor?
I'm 100% for them, 100%. 2 terms, 8 years ought to be enough for me or anyone else that runs, and I will push hard to enact term limits for state elected positions, not for local positions. I mean, your mayors and city councils, that's hard enough to get people to serve, but state elected positions should be 2 terms or 8 years.
I think it should be 2 terms, and I've already pledged that I'm only going to serve 2 terms.
I've already said that I'm not going to serve over 2 terms. I've made that commitment a long time ago.
I think turnover in our state government is a good thing. We had term limits at one point that was done through the initiative process, but that got overturned by the legislature. And part of the reason was that the term limits covered every office, from school board trustees to right through the governor, and some of the local elected officials, like school board members or sometimes city councilors, especially in the smaller communities, it's hard to recruit people to run for those positions. So we might want to exempt some of these locally elected officials from term limits, but I'm very much in favor of term limits for the governor, the statewide offices, and perhaps the legislative offices.
2 terms?
I think 2 terms would be sufficient for anybody.
Term limits for governor, I look at term limits as the way of the people to decide for themselves whether one should stay on board or not. I mean, term limits are every 2 years here in our state, and for governor it would be every 4 years. And I think that if the people decided to implement term limits by the initiative, by ballot, and then so be it. I always support the will of the people.
According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, Shoshone County has the highest unemployment rate in the state of Idaho, sitting at about 7.7%. Adams County is the lowest at 7%. How will you as governor help boost employment in the valley and the whole state of Idaho?
You know, one of my focuses will be on small business. I'm a small business guy. I own and operate my own businesses. I understand the pressures that are there, and we will do everything we can with policies to favor small businesses to allow them to thrive, and part of that is getting people connected with those jobs.
So one of the things I want to do is ensure that the state has management control over our federal lands. One of the problems we have, one of the reasons this area is doing so poorly, and it used to do very well 20, 30 years ago, is because the federal government has prevented us from using our natural resources. I'm a big proponent of local management of federal lands, making sure that we manage our lands under state management practices, and then we can use the revenues from our natural resources to help the local community. I think we could do much better. We can create high-paying jobs, we can create new businesses, and we can receive more revenue from a timber mining and other natural resource extraction if we are allowed to have multiple use on the federal lands.
Well, Adams County, Clearwater County, Shoshone County have progressively, have consistently been in that ranking, and it's very unfortunate. I'm the one candidate that's not from Ada County. I come from rural Idaho. Jim County used to have a kind of a higher unemployment rate, but I think the solution to the unemployment area in these, particularly in these resource-dependent areas, is to add value to our existing commodities, whether they be commodities that we mine out of the ground, the timber industry, whether it's agriculture, that we take those commodities we have in Idaho and add as much value as possible to them here in the state. But then, because of what takes place as a result of a modern economy to where technology does away with jobs, we need to diversify those economies. We need to make it to where the students that are graduating from this high school right here have the best possible chance to come back into the Silver Valley and create new companies there. We do that by having a regulatory atmosphere, a state government that moves at the speed of business so they can come back. They want to live here. That's part of the reason we have a high unemployment. People love the Silver Valley. People love Clearwater County. People love Adams County. And when the jobs kind of go away, they're reluctant to move. We have to create an opportunity for them to have best possible opportunity to succeed near their homes and their families.
Okay. I think a lot of that is through business development, having the Department of Commerce work with the local redevelopment agencies to encourage and assist companies to grow, that want to and create more jobs. Part of it also is making sure that our schools, including the community colleges and universities, are producing the kind of workers that those companies need. So it's a multi-pronged approach through economic development opportunities. The state can help with perhaps grants and assistance with infrastructure. For example, if they need more capacity in their water treatment facility, their sewage facilities, the state can help with that. But part of it is an education approach to be sure that we're training the workers that the local companies need so their companies can grow.
Raise the wage. We have to get to the cost of living, work with our consumer price index, and start discussing real solutions for real people. And that means ensuring that we are paying them adequately, because no working family in Idaho should live in poverty.
According to ISP, District 1, which is the North Idaho region, has the highest crime rate in Idaho. What do you plan to do about this major problem, not only in District 1, but all?
By and large, Idaho is pretty safe compared to our neighbors, but I think it's when you get closer to the borders that we have some of that influx from outside. I think we need to stand firm on what we do well, which is protect our residents. We need to make sure that we have a safe place and that criminals are deterred from being here. We got to address the drug problem. That's the biggie. I'm an ER doc, right? So for 18 years I've seen what drugs do to families, to people, and to society. And we do not have treatment options here in Idaho. We've got to get more resources for opioid addicted patients, for a lot of the things that happen. A lot of those crimes happen because of addictions, and if you don't get in and intervene, you're going to have more costs out the back end.
Well, we just need to really reassure the police officers and work with them closely, make sure that they're doing the things that are necessary, giving them the resources so they can do their job.
Well, a lot of the crime rate, particularly the property crime rate, is a result of the opioid issue. And so many of the property crimes are a result of that. We have an opioid plan in Idaho, and I want to boost that plan. We've made great progress in just actually the last 6 months about warning doctors of the impacts of multiple prescriptions for opioids. We need to stop the problem at its source, which is the overprescription of opioids. And there's several things we can do. Right now, if you're a doctor and you prescribe opioids, you receive a report every month or every 2 months that says, where are you ranked next to your peers? We have gone from a state where we were the 11th highest level of prescription down to 35th as a result of what we're doing, but we got to do more because a lot of that property crime is a result of the opioid epidemic.
Yeah, I think the first thing we need to do is take a look at the types of crimes that are being committed. And right now our prisons are so crowded that we are shipping prisoners to Texas because we don't have room for them in Idaho. And then when you look at the nature of the crimes, a pretty large percentage of the people in prison are in prison because of nonviolent drug offenses. I would be very much in favor of paying attention to addictions and start to treat addictions like a disease instead of a crime, and help with treatment facilities, let these prisoners get the treatment they need, and try to work through a system like the drug courts, where we would have people addicted to crime or addicted to substances go through a treatment facility rather than putting them in prison. They could then return to be more productive citizens in our society, could work and support their families, and then they're not exposed to the violent felons that are in our prisons. I think if we evaluate the kinds of crimes that are being committed, I think we'll find a large percentage of them are nonviolent drug offenses.
Idaho State Police, one of the major issues we have is the criminalization of marijuana, which a lot of cases are, I think, flooding their offices, and they're sending folks to our local jails, which are overflowing, and of course our prison system. I think by decriminalizing marijuana would be really a cost savings to the taxpayers and our bottom line overall. That money could also be resurfaced back to local schools, which would help more education programs. It could even be offered in terms of scholarships for other opportunities, which is the best investment we can make, which is for good young students like yourself.
What makes you stand out against all of the other candidates?
Oh, I'm not a politician. I'm not a politician. So I think against the guys in my primary, I just hope the voters give me a shot to come in with new ideas and a fresh approach to running a government. I can promise we're going to work really, really hard for the people of Idaho and remember who we serve and put people above politics.
Two simple things. I have a history of being a conservative fighter for the congressional district. If you look at the people of the congressional district, they're looking for somebody who will stand up to special interest groups, who will stand up to even their own party if necessary, who will stand up to the federal government. I have a history of doing that. It's not just something that is rhetoric, but if you look at everything I have done over the last 12 years since I've been in the legislature and in Congress, I have always stood for the little guy as opposed to standing up for special interest groups. So I will stand up against the forces that are forcing the people of Idaho to spend more money on their health care, to spend more money on things that they don't need to spend on. I'm going to reduce people's taxes because I've actually shown that I can do that in Congress and in the legislature. But number two, I actually have a good relationship with this administration, and that's going to be important because sometimes you have to stand up to the federal government, but sometimes you also have to work with the federal government. I actually campaigned for President Trump when he was running for president. I'm the only candidate in this race who has a personal relationship with President Trump, who has a personal relationship with Mike Pence, the vice president. I have a personal relationship with Ryan Zinke, who is the Department of Interior Secretary. All these people will pick up the phone when I call them because they know me personally. So that's something that's going to be important to this region.
Well, I mean, I believe that where I'm from, I've spent my lifetime as a farmer and rancher, which is my career, but I've been selected by my peers in the ranching business, my peers in the business community, which is one of the reasons that I've been to the Silver Valley many times, my peers in the philanthropic community, the Idaho Community Foundation, which does great work here in the Valley, in the education field on the University of Idaho Foundation. I've spent my life leading in all those industries in the state of Idaho. I want to take that experience, understanding the economies of Idaho, the cultures and the values of Idaho, and lead the state on to Idaho to where we continue to be the fastest growing income of any state right here in Idaho.
Okay, I think the most important, the highest priority issues facing our state right now are education, making sure that we provide that uniform and thorough system of education, and providing access to health care for people, as well as protecting our public lands. And my background as a businessman for nearly 50 years, as a certified public accountant, as a business owner that has created over 400 jobs in my hotel in Boise, the arena, and the Idaho Steelheads hockey team, plus my 21 years on the school board, my 13 years on the St. Luke's Hospital Board has positioned me to be better prepared to address these critical issues that are facing our state right now.
I care above and beyond. I'm from here. I've been here for many generations. My heritage stems for thousands of years, and I'm not going anywhere. I'm born and raised by elders in a brilliant community of good folks, from veterans to people with disabilities, and young and old. I've just been blessed, and this is my way of giving back, to offer my support in every which way that I can.
According to a recent study conducted by Boise State University, the economy, jobs, and wages came in at number 2 on the most pressing issues facing Idaho. The longest strike in the Silver Valley's history is going on right now at the Lucky Friday mine, where workers walked off the job more than a year ago. Do you think the governor should play a role in trying to resolve this issue? And if so, why don't you think our current governor has?
So if there's a way for me to be helpful in a negotiation, I certainly would. That's what I've done my whole life, is negotiations. I love deals, and I think that getting people together, if there were a role, I would certainly welcome any input that I might provide. It depends on where the parties are at and if they needed it, right? Yeah. That's the other thing. It's a private company and it's private people, but if I could play a role, absolutely, I would try to help.
That's a great question. I don't know why he has, because I think a governor should. I think governors should sit with both sides and talk about what the differences are. Obviously it's a private industry and you don't want too much government involvement, but sometimes it takes just a clear head, somebody that can talk to both sides and see if there's a way to solve this. And I have no idea why the governor's office has not been involved.
If you were elected governor, what would you do?
You know, I need to study the issues first. I need to make sure that I understand both sides. I think it's important that you don't jump into something like this without having all the proper knowledge and all the background information. But I would like to talk to both sides and make sure that they're working together and that we can come to an agreement.
Well, he has not. I mean, that is a labor issue that needs to be solved between the employers and the employee. And I don't think, where do you stop? If the governor were to intervene in the relationship between employees and employer, where would you stop? That would be you would open up a can of worms there that I don't know where it would stop. That's the way our process works in this country, and I believe it's the way it should continue. That has, and I dearly want it to be resolved. The fact that people are having to move, that they're having to take their children out of this school and anywhere else is a tragedy. But we also need to have more mining jobs come into the community. The mines that are on the radar screen to be opened up and to be started here, we need to get them going. We need to have more mining in the Silver Valley, not less.
If you're elected governor, what would you do to resolve the issue?
I would urge the parties to get together and resolve it as fast as possible.
Well, it takes leadership at the top, and our state, our people are demanding leadership in every single aspect, whether it's for a community health service for children, where we're defunding their support services, or coming down to mental health crisis centers. We need to implement more support, or our current public school system shortage, or the failure, the fact that we are hurting our local public schools. So leadership is demanded everywhere, and this is one area of interest that specifically focuses on our local workers. And right now, if you have a chief executive officer who sits at the top, who is able to negotiate a better opportunity for workers and local businesses, then if I needed to step in that arena, I will.
If elected governor, what would you do?
Definitely be a good steward on behalf of our workers and ensure that there's fairness implemented on both sides.
And lastly, what is your favorite thing about North Idaho?
Ooh, my favorite part about being in North Idaho, or my favorite part of North Idaho? I'll tell you one thing. When I started this campaign, people said to me, listen, don't even go up north. You know, I don't think they're going to like you very much. But my best friendships of the entire campaign have been in North Idaho. I love the people up here, and some of my best friends for the rest of my life. Dr. Lorna Finman is going to help me fix education. Ron Rock down in Post Falls is going to help me with healthcare. Ron Nilsson, business guy, owns Ground Force, has become a dear friend. Up here, Mayor Kip. Mayor Kip is this guy's one of the greatest guys I've ever met. Right here, we were at this restaurant a year ago. We love North Idaho. We'll open an office up here, the governor's office. We need to come together as One Idaho. That's what we're on right now. We're on the One Idaho tour. So the reason why we're doing this is the most alarming thing to me this year has been that we do feel so distracted. North Idaho, the great state of Ada, Magic Valley, and Eastern Idaho, we're going to come together with leadership that pulls everyone together, and everyone knows this is what we're doing in our state, and I can't wait to do that.
Well, I was just telling you offline, my family and I did a trip of the entire 1st Congressional District. I just wanted them to see how important the work that I was doing was, and I wanted to see them to see the beauty of this district. This is I think the most beautiful area in the whole United States. And we went through this area, and their favorite spot was actually Wallace. We came here, and we went to the zip line, and we spent hours on the zip line. Then we went to the Hiawatha Trail, and then we were just walking around downtown Wallace, and they were just so excited. And one of my kids said, "This is just like Disneyland. This is even better than Disneyland." They loved this so much. So every time we think about North Idaho, we think about this area, and they also love standing in the center of the universe. So yeah, that's a huge attraction.
Obviously, I've got family in the Palouse area that have been farmers there forever. Obviously, myself, my kids were all graduates of the University of Idaho. That's why I'm up here multiple times a year. But I love the diversity of Idaho. I love the mountains. I love actually today is an incredible day to drive around the state of Idaho and see the beauty and the character and the people, and to understand the difference. You know, the mining industry is well, I guess the trappers were here first, but the mining industry is the second oldest industry, and you have to understand the fabric of Idaho and how important the mining industry, not only in the creation of this valley, but in the creation of this state. The shape of this state is predicated on what the mining industry, if you study your Idaho history like I have, part of the shape of our state was because those rascals in Washington were afraid that Lewiston was going to be the capital of the state of Washington, and that's why we've got the shape we do. You have to understand that if you're going to govern the state of Idaho.
Oh, I love just the beauty here. A couple years ago, some friends and I bicycled the Trail of the Coeur d'Alenes all the way from Plummer to Mullen in 2 days, and then we took a break and drove over to the Trail of the Hiawatha, and we did that in 1 day. We rode from the bottom to the top and then back down, and then we came back here and rode back from Pinehurst to Plummer to finish our trip. It was just beautiful. I hope to do that again.
You know, we are ultimately the best stewards, and I think that while we are good neighbors to each other, my most favorite thing is all the beauty that surrounds us. We have great lakes, great mountains, people work together. Granted, we sometimes suffer together. We also have our shared successes, and I'm really proud of seeing good folks like yourself. You're the future. You're going to change everything. But I love that we have a lot of good kids who think good-heartedly like you do.
Multiple publications, including the Idaho Statesman, have suggested that you're actually a Democrat running as a Republican. In the past, you donated the maximum allowable donation of $5,000 to A.J. Belukoff, a Democratic candidate who's also running for governor this year. What's your response to these suggestions?
Oh, it's been funny. Maybe someday you'll get into politics, and all of a sudden you'll hear them say stuff about you that's just not true. It's just not true. I've been a lifelong conservative. I've always voted Republican. Yeah, I gave money to AJ. I gave the same amount of money to Butch, and I voted for Butch. That's that one. Overwhelming donations have been to Republicans, but I've given some to Democrats over the years. I'm not a Democrat. People that know me know that, and look at my policies. Anyone that knows me know that my record in medicine, my record in the business world, I do what I say I'm going to do, and we've laid out a vision for Idaho that is very conservative. Can't wait to do those things that we promised.
A super PAC that supports your opponent, Tommy Ahlquist, has accused you of not sponsoring any bills that have become law. Is this true?
It is not true, and in fact, if you look at all the fact checks, they have all said that it's not true. I sponsored 3 bills on my own that became law, and number 2, I've sponsored about 20 other bills, co-sponsored 20 other bills that became law. That's been the saddest thing about this campaign. I have never seen the level of lies in a Republican primary that we have seen from Tommy Ahlquist and his daddy's PAC. And I think it's important for us to understand that if a person is willing to lie to get elected, imagine what they're going to do once they're in office.
On your website, you claim that you'll lower taxes and cut wasteful spending, but not only have you voted for a bill in 2003 to bump the state's sales tax from 5% to 6%, you also made recommendations to increase gas taxes in Idaho. If elected governor, would you really lower taxes?
Yes, I've pledged to decrease taxes by $350 million, but without sacrificing what we're doing in education. That temporary sales tax, so we passed back then, it was going to be a significant cut to education if we didn't do that. We have a constitutional and moral obligation to fund education, and the reason that we did that back then, and Governor Kim Thorne was governor, was to save education, to not have to slash education, and I'm committed to that. But right now the state of Idaho is growing, and we need to take part of that growth and give it back to our citizens, whether it be lowering the tax rate or taking the sales tax off of groceries. Those are the things I'll do if I'm governor.
Idaho has been under Republican administration for about 23 years now. You ran last election and lost. What makes you think that you can win this election as a Democrat?
You'd be surprised it's the first time I get asked that question. Not really. You know, things have changed a lot. I was relatively unknown in 2014, but I'm much better known now. And people realize that one-party rule has been a bad deal for Idaho. It has driven us to the bottom in a lot of measures, whether it's education funding, whether it's per capita income. Those kinds of things are what has come out of a one-party rule that has control of our state for decades. And people are tired of it, and they're ready to look at a different approach, and I'm getting very good reception all around the state with the approach we would take, which is a collaborative, bipartisan approach to solving the problems that face our state.
If elected governor, you would not only be the first Native American, but also the first woman governor in Idaho. What does this mean to you in this day and age?
I think what it means to all of us is that we're offering a different kind of perspective, one that's innovative, bold, sincere, and a fresh new face of leadership. I think that we're not offering any kind of politicking. We're being above and beyond the two sides and making sure that the people's voices are always at the forefront. And because my land is here, my children will inherit the land. It's the same as all of us who are all going to inherit this land, and we have to take care of it. We have to make sure that we're doing right by each and every one, and most especially being good neighbors.
Well, this concludes our special coverage of the gubernatorial interviews. For Channel 3 News, Suddenly Communications, and of course, the Wallace High School, I'm John Webb. Thank you so much for tuning in tonight, and we'll catch you on our next edition of the interviews. Have a great night.